One of the hardest things that I have ever faced in my personal mental health journey is looking at all of the options that I was aware of that existed in life, looking at the paths before me, the people, the places, and the things, and finding that none of it really appealed to me at all. I was not able to find a path that I wanted to be on or a person I wanted to kind of emulate or style my life after. And the thought that I remember that kept popping into my head over and over and over again, I mentioned this on my recent live, and it seemed like a lot of people connected with it, was the person I want to be does not seem to exist. I had this feeling that there could be something out there somewhere for me. I never fell into just complete and utter hopelessness, but I could not see an example of it. I couldn't see anyone living a life that I thought I wanted to live or doing anything that I really wanted to do. Some people would have like one little piece of a life I thought I might like. And it was like, if I could take this piece from this person's life and this piece from this person's life and make this sort of a la carte menu of humanity, maybe that could work, but I didn't know if that was possible. And I had no footsteps to follow in. I had no predetermined path to take. Nothing really appealed to me. And for a long time, I thought maybe there's just something really obscure that I haven't found yet. Some trajectory or some lifestyle that's just really, really uncommon. And I just need to search for it. And if I could just find it and then follow that path, everything would work out okay. And I looked really, really hard for this thing. I looked in a lot of places that I probably never should have gone to. For some reason, I'm still not 100% sure why this was the case for me. I always assumed that my answer would be found in sort of a dark place, for lack of a better phrasing. And I think that's always because I was always kind of drawn to darker imagery. I was always really into like metal and industrial music and horror movies and like kind of darker anime and manga, gothic imagery. That something about that stuff just clicked with my brain. And most things don't click with my brain. So I always sort of took that as like breadcrumbs for this path I was supposed to be on. So I looked a lot of places and did a lot of things to try to find this person or this life or this ideal that was finally going to make this misfit, unbelonging feeling go away and give me the sense of guidance that I had longed for a very, very long time. Around this time, I also kind of became even a little delusional about this thing. This part, I'll be honest, is harder for me to talk about. It's hard for me to be honest, it's hard for me to even remember this accurately to some degree. But I remember that for a long time, I got so far into this idea that like this life that I'm supposed to live is hidden from me that I started to think maybe there's some like secret society of people like me out there, like living in the sewers somewhere or something. I don't know if I literally thought that. Um, I just remember like this is a very obscure reference I know, but like the Vampire Club from the movie Blade. Not that I literally thought I was a vampire, but that was sort of an example of like, are these people out there somewhere? Are they just like waiting for me to find them and just kept looking. I looked so hard for so long in so many places, and I was so convinced that once I found these people or this place, that all this loneliness and isolation and despair would just melt away like the rain and everything would be fine. So if you're wondering how I dealt with these feelings and how I coped with this sense of like longing and isolation and reconciled this loneliness I felt in the world, the short answer is that I didn't. I certainly never found the answer that I was looking for. I never found like the person or the thing or the answer. Certainly never found the secret society of sewer people or vampire clubs or whatever it was that I thought I was going to find in the places that I was looking. What I did is I accepted that it was true. What I mean by that is I accepted that there was not a preset path for me, that there was not any one person who I could look to and say, I want to live your life. I want to do the things you've done. I want to be just like you. I didn't have that. There were people I looked up to in some certain areas, but there was no one who I'm like, that's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. To this day, I have not found that. I haven't. And in that acceptance, I would have thought if I accept, okay, this really is true. I really am kind of as different and complicated and weird or whatever as I think I am. I might have thought that that would fill me with like hopelessness or despair or frustration, but it didn't. It actually gave me the opposite feeling. I found peace in it. I found comfort in it because I realized if the life I want doesn't already exist, that doesn't mean I can't create it. That doesn't mean this is impossible. That doesn't mean I'm going to feel this way forever. It just means I have to work really hard. And for those of you who have seen the video where I talked about almost getting kicked out of grad school and not finishing my doctorate, it was a really similar feeling. This one came first, but it was a very similar feeling to when I got the final revisions back for my doctoral dissertation that I was told I wouldn't be able to finish. And I looked at them and I thought, that's a lot, but I can do it. And it was actually this hopeful, optimistic, motivating feeling. It's basically the same feeling. I decided I'm going to try. This is probably early 20s at this point. I'm just going to try to make something that works for me, even if no one has ever made it before. No one has ever done this exact thing that I'm trying to do. I had arbitrarily associated the truth of my separation or whatever you want to call it with negativity. We do this often. I've made whole videos about this. I'll make more about them. It's one of the most important things to understand about our brains. Many, perhaps even most thoughts that we have combine an objective truth or observation in a subjective value judgment or feeling or label. So I had correctly identified I'm looking at lives and futures and like just none of it looks good to me. I don't see anything I want here. That was true. That wasn't me being difficult or purposely cutting myself off from things. I really wasn't finding it and I really was trying. But I had attached a subjective value to it, which is that it was bad or that it was a problem. I don't have a path to follow in life and that's bad. The bad part was an assumption. And once I accepted this truth about myself, I realized it's not inherently good or bad. It just is. It is hard, but hard and bad are not the same thing. Hard things can be okay. The hard parts of life are not always the bad parts of life. And I didn't need to be attaching this label to this situation. I am a la carte human. And maybe you are too. I bet a lot of you are. Meaning we have to kind of blend aspects of several different lifestyles, values, whatever it may be. There's not like this exact thing that we can emulate to get to a point in our lives that is satisfactory to us. We have to sort of build a custom life by bringing together all these seemingly disconnected elements of what we need to feel content or happy or satisfied in this world. So, a few things I learned from this phase of life that I want to share with you. The first is I believe it is better to be accepted by oneself and rejected by everyone and everything else in the world than it is to be accepted by the world but rejected by yourself. And this is that acceptance that we've talked about before. Acceptance meaning the opposite of denial. Acceptance doesn't mean you look inward and you say, everything is awesome. I am perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. And if the world ever doesn't like anything about me, it's their fault, not mine. Acceptance means you take an honest and accurate self inventory of who you are, and what you need. It doesn't mean everything's good. I am a socially awkward person in most contexts. I have an unusual overlap of passions and interests, and I may very well be the only human in the center of all my different Venn diagrams. It is neither good nor bad. It just is. There is no reason for me to attach a value judgment to these things that are not inherently valuable or invaluable. They just are. The world will attach plenty of value judgments to who and what you are. You don't need to add to that by just piling on and saying, yes, I'm screwed up. Yes, I'm hopeless. Yes, I'm never going to go anywhere. You don't need any help doing those things. In fact, you have the ability to be the built in countermeasure to everything this world lacks and fails to give you, which for most of us is going to be quite a bit. If the world cannot understand you, It is all that much more important that you understand yourself. You should work twice as hard to understand yourself if you are a person who has trouble getting that understanding from other people, because the world is bizarrely stingy at extending understanding to us. I don't know why that is. If the world has been invalidating to your pain or to your experiences, do not fall in line with that. Do not emulate the world. Be the counterbalance to that. Give yourself the validation that the world has failed to provide you with. You have the ability to balance those scales because you are in your head 24/7 and you will hear your own voice more than you will hear the voices of every other person in this world combined. You can be the countermeasure. That's what I chose to do, basically. That's when this started to turn around, this sense of directionlessness and lack of belonging. Instead of aligning with the world that said, hey, we don't have a place for you. Sorry. Here's all the spaces. Like it was like middle school with the stupid lunch tables. Like, nope, no space here, no space here. I chose to defy the world. I chose to make my own space since one did not exist for me. And that's a lifelong journey. I'm still doing that. It's not like I've mastered it or solved it. I'm still customizing those variables and trying to figure out who and what the heck I am and how to build a life that works for me. But it is getting easier the longer I do it. And I think that that is such a key point. The idea that my existence itself stands in defiance of a flawed and broken system gives me an incredible sense of joy and peace. And I'm going to continue doing that as long as I can. I can look at the world and say, you really tried, didn't you? You tried with everything you had to reject me, to break me, and to make this not work for me. And you came close, don't get me wrong. You almost got me. It was a close call, but I'm still here. And I am fighting for myself now, and it's getting better every year. Not every day. I wish it was that consistent. It's not. Some days or even weeks, not so good. But if you zoom out far enough, if I zoom out far enough and I look year to year, it's getting better. I'm so happy to be able to say that to you. And I believe you can accomplish the same thing. If you can look inward, figure out what you need from this life, and whether you have an example of that or not, you can create it. You can bring those elements together and start to craft a customized life for yourself, even if you can't find any examples of it existing prior to you, because you're an a la carte human, and that's okay.